Let's get down in the dirt with the Home Show Garden Pros.
Well, hey, everybody. Facebook Live. Here we are, Home Show Garden Pros. And man, what a wonderful week of weather for gardening. Hopefully you're getting lots of seeds in the ground. If you're wondering what to plant right now out in your garden, just check our Facebook page or our homeshowgardenpros.com. We have a planting calendar, and it's there to help you out to figure out what seeds to put in the ground. And I hope you're enjoying this beautiful weather. Excuse me. So Home Show Garden Pros is a radio show. And what we do is we try to give great gardening advice. So this last week, along with me, we have these co-op members. So I'll break it down a little bit. We have these awesome co-op members. They're part of this great information exchange. Sherry Hara was on last week. She's from Plants for All Seasons for 2 full hours, just dished out about soil, about veggies, about flowers. We really talked about flowers for a while, but she does such a great job. This Saturday, is Zach Buchanan from Buchanan's Native Plants and Joey Linderman. And Michael Wagner from Warren Southern Gardens up there in Kingwood. So a couple of great knowledge specialists, and we're going to explore what you should be doing now with your annuals, with your fruit trees. There's a lot of stuff to be doing right now. Soon, all the lawn conversation is going to begin. So get ready for that. Also, we are doing a lot of fun stuff. We're actively trying to find cool stories, things like that. I saw a really cool garden this week at Westside High School. And man, they're doing some cool stuff there with agriculture at a big HSD school. It's a lot of cool stuff. Speaking of cool stuff, cue the introduction video. Christina originally because she really got me into garden education, not only attending classes, but also learning how to teach them. So she used to be with Urban Harvest, but now she represents the Galveston County Master Naturalist. And she's going to tell you a lot more about the Master Naturalist program. But basically, it's an organization that wants people to understand the concept of the whole garden, of everything in it. She does a lot of stuff around town. She is a ton of people's favorite person. So without further ado, here's the voice of Chris LaChance. So,
hi.
Hey, so that's your garden we were just looking at.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that was about a year ago, not too long after lockdown. So
nice.
It was a perfect opportunity to get out there and really spend even more time in the garden and make kind of like a nice little sanctuary for myself and my 2 pups.
No, that is awesome. And it's so key. A lot of veteran gardeners were able to get back into gardening, like you're talking about. And you had some really cool plants there. I saw some salvia, maybe some 4 o'clocks. Wasn't quite sure. Definitely ended with that beautiful plant. Yes.
There was some dianthus in there, but it started out with Belinda's Dream. That's like my most favorite rose. It's so easy. And they have these beautiful pink blooms that really smell like a rose. So yeah. And with just some simple deadheading the spent blooms, it really produced all summer into the fall, and it's still going. So
that's awesome. And Belinda's Dream can actually have a really nice bush. It's not one of those super ugly bushes. You can shape it and still get the nice shape and the beautiful flowers. So tell us about Texas Master Naturalists and what you guys are doing these days.
Sure. So the Master Naturalist program is a partnership with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension and Texas Parks and Wildlife. And what Master Naturalists do, they go out and volunteer, bringing environmental education to adults and children, and then being a great support system for parks and nature preserves, natural areas. There is a turtle rescue program. So they are really all over the place, helping to support restoration and helping to support nature.
Absolutely. And I love it because it really is gardening education, but it also is a lot of bigger picture stuff, like how the wildlife is involved and all that stuff. Wonderful.
Right.
So I know you love pollinating. you love gardening for pollinators and caring about the butterflies and the bees and the hummingbirds.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So, and that really is paramount for how I try to garden, creating the best possible environment for wildlife and for me as well.
Yes.
But
yes, that's right.
but one of the great things though is that it always gives me something to look at, something to discover. One of my all-time favorite poets is Mary Oliver, and she always has she has said, and I will paraphrase it, that always have room for amazement, or always be amazed and stay curious. So
Absolutely.
I try to create that in my garden. So as I walk through my garden, and every day there's something that I can just stop and say, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So yes.
That is wonderful. And I know that you're actually a big fan of integrating food plants in with your kind of attraction plants, native attraction plants. And I think that's so cool, because you're a confessed, you don't have a veggie bed, but you have lots of veggie plants. So that's an
exactly. Yes, exactly.
You did want to talk about a specific nature preserve at Armand Bayou a little bit, and what they've got going on.
Sure. So it's Armand Bayou Nature Center down in the Clear Lake area. And it's a 2,300 acre preserve, which is pretty amazing. Wow. It's the largest urban nature preserve in the country. I bet you didn't know that.
I did not know that.
So it's a great place to go, just to discover nature, great trails. You can see the restored prairie, beautiful all year. You can take a kayak trip with a guide, and we also have a pontoon boat that will take you, along the Armand Bayou and the tributaries with a guide. So lots of really wonderful things going down there, and great education.
Just like Disney.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's like a Disney ride right there in real life.
Right, but when the alligators are real, they're not those mechanical ones that kind of come up and
Yeah, they're not gonna capsize the boat. That's
right. Yeah.
And those are the only dinosaurs that you'll see too, is the crocodile, the alligators. You won't see any brontosaurus or anything like that. That's amazing. But, I didn't know that they did the pontoon boat tours, and I didn't realize it was such a huge space. And that's really big.
Really need to visit, and especially these days where being outside is important anytime and wonderful anytime, but especially where you can be outside, you can be with your family and friends, and still be able to have a change of scenery when you want to get outside.
Absolutely. That is wonderful. And it sounds like you can kind of get lost even on all those trails, not lost, but back to a whimsical space of joy and good microbes for your brain and your lungs.
Yeah.
So
to be sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what we love doing is answering gardening questions. We gather experts from all over the city, like Christina here, and we answer gardening questions. Just a quick shout out to Buchanan's, to Enchanted Forest, Enchanted Gardens, Warren Southern Gardens, Plants for All Seasons, Kingwood Garden Center, and Nelson Nursery and Water Gardens out in Katy, just for giving us these great experts all the time, every single week on the radio show. And we're going to start answering some of your questions. What we do on our website is we have a little spot that says Ask the Expert, and you go to that and click it, and you send an email to me, and we get an answer. So we also like to read them online here. So Chris, you ready to answer some questions?
Sure.
Okay, here's the first one. What are your go-to easy plants, preferably perennial, or plants that will last year-round? We're in Alvin. That's from Aaron. So go-to easy plants.
Go-to easy plants. So some of those that you saw in that beginning video definitely are some of the tried and true easier ones. Now you can pretty much go with almost any salvia, and there's such a huge variety of salvias. The one that was in the video is Salvia odahal, and that's a really well-behaved one, and it also is great for hummingbirds. That's when I first knew that the hummingbirds are migrating through. I was out there checking out the garden, and right beside me is a hummingbird. It's like, get out of the way, lady. I want that plant. So that was a really good one.
That is great. Sometimes the hummingbirds can be kind of rude, though. I mean, that's very true. They definitely can be like, get out of the way, especially to each other.
Oh, and they'll part your hair if you're kind of, in their way. But yes. And anyway, so some of the coneflowers, like the echinaceas, those are fantastic. And now with so many different varieties, there's one for almost any color combination that you want. I particularly like the old-fashioned ones, the nice tall pink ones, and that's the same echinacea that's used for as a treatment for colds. Let's see, another one that another group I like are the Rudbeckias. Sometimes we call them brown-eyed Susans or black-eyed Susans. And same thing there. There's several different varieties now that you can choose from. And one in particular that's my favorite, it's the Rudbeckia maxima, which is one that can tolerate some damp feet, unlike some of the other ones. And but it will the blooms will be up to 6 feet in height. So that's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah.
I know. Exactly.
Well, and those are all Texas kind of proven plants that do great in our area. That's an awesome little list.
Yes. More?
Let's do more. Or it's maybe people can go to the Texas Master Naturalist one. How many more you got? I mean, there's so many good plants for Houston that, I mean, for me, lifting up a few favorites. Oh, look at that. She has a list. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to get the camera direction right. It's really tough. By all means, say a couple more.
Let's see. Okay, so coming back to the salvias, there's another one that is the Mexican bush sage. So that has gray green foliage in the summertime, and then toward fall, it puts out these really great, stalks of like purple and white, kind of velvety looking flowers. So that's always a great one. And again, another hummingbird attractor, and as well as other pollinators. Gara is great. That's a native prairie plant, and it's also called whirling butterflies. And part of that is because when you look at the plant from a distance, they're all the little blooms actually look like little teeny butterflies. But it does really well, especially in Houston as we get into our more drought part of the year. Let's see, Louisiana irises, those are wonderful. Yes. There's a proliferation of those, and some of the summer bulbs like the crinum lilies. Those are fantastic, and those can also take some wet feet too. So they can handle wet conditions if you happen to have a spot in your yard that collects water. So, okay.
No, that's good. Great. That's really great. No, that's what a great list. And all of those, again, Houston proven, really beautiful plants, and definitely good for year-round gardening. You don't have to fuss with those. That's awesome. All right, and nice. Let's do the next. They come back. That's right. And so our next question here, we've got a very good one for you here. It's not exactly a question. It's more of like a talk to me. Paul says, need ideas for front yard edibles. So Paul didn't want to waste any of our time with fluffy question words or marks. He just wants ideas for front yard edibles. So I know that you integrate edibles and some of these landscape plants. So what are some of your favorite front yard edibles?
So as we talked about, I'm not a pure vegetable gardener per se, but
Sure.
I always include some edibles in the landscape somewhere. So, especially a lot of the herbs. And one great thing about herbs is that in the cool part of the year, that's really when they flourish. When the mints and the thymes and the sages, they do really well.
Right.
And then I had a few weeks or about a month ago, I planted some Swiss chard and some lettuces, and so I'm always incorporating something. Oh, and I have some kale out there, but it looks, it gives a nice contrast to what is growing in the garden. There's always, different leaf shapes or different shades of green. So something to add and something that's edible.
I think that's awesome. And my mind always thinks of, when I talk about the front yard landscaping, is really like evergreen shrubs, the plain old boring evergreen shrubs. And one of the prettiest shrubs is kumquats. It just makes a really kind of Darth Vader shaped bush that can go all the way to the ground, and really nice dome. And it has a bunch of edible fruit. Now, the thing about kumquats is you do eat the peel, but the peel is sweet. And so you get a real sour sweet combo. And, you can put them in groups. You can put them in a line. I love them that way. One of your butterfly plants that I did mention, but I know you love, is Mexican mint marigold. And it's another evergreen, easy to shape. If you want one of those, lines or rows of landscaping, Mexican mint marigold is great for that. Butterflies like it. And it's a really pretty flower and a really dark green plant. So that's a good one. So on top of your awesome list.
Well, and I think it's also referred to as Texas tarragon. Correct? Am I right?
Yes, that's right. That's right. It does have a very strong tarragon flavor.
Yeah.
Great in cocktails.
So I very often use that. Is it? Oh, have to give me the recipe.
With gin. It's really good with gin and cocktails.
Nice.
But I think what you said about, if you get some of that purple kale that's deliciously edible, the shards with the yellows and the reds, they really can add a lot of color. And at a different kind of height level than a lot of times you're thinking color is going to be. So I think, hopefully people can rewatch this, take some notes, because we just gave you some great edible landscaping ideas. So look for your invoice later. No, I'm just kidding. We're doing this because we love teaching gardening. Well, great answer there. We're going to move on. Yes. We're going to move on to answer 3, or question 3, I guess. So this is from Jane. And Jane says, we have had a day full of hundreds, maybe thousands of robins flocking in our yard. Harbinger of an early spring?
Jane, I love your question. And I love that you are so observant that you looked up and you've seen all these wonderful robins. Well, actually, they are still heading south. So we're still in that migratory pattern. Living in Houston, we're so lucky that we are right on the migratory flyway for all these wonderful songbirds. So what you saw, Jane, was a flock of robins heading south. So believe it or not, they will be turning around in another, maybe a month or two, and heading the other direction. But you talk about harbinger of spring. So I grew up in the Northeast. And I tell you, we just all could not wait until we saw that first robin, because that truly was letting us know that it wouldn't be too many more months before it would be summer.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. And my question when I emailed her was, what are they doing? So I mean, I'm glad to hear that they probably are migrating birds, because a lot of times you'll see in your lawn a bunch of birds. They look like they're grazing, kind of like cows. They're picking stuff out of the yard. And generally that means you have a pretty big caterpillar infestation. So I asked her that question, did how are they acting? Are they grazing? But because if she had thousands, that to me, that would be kind of terrifying. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of birds. So unless she has
looking for Hedron.
That's right. Definitely looking for food. But a lot of times armyworms are what they eat when they're grazing. So
well, and what brings to mind too is what I try to encourage people to do is to rather than raking up the leaves and putting them in a bag and putting them at the curb, is actually to take those leaves and rake them back into the flower beds. And what that's doing is creating a really good climate or home for beneficial insects. And recently, when I didn't have that huge a flock, but I had several robins in my yard, and they were just hopping through the leaves in the flower beds, and you could, they were just flipping them over back and forth. And so they were, providing them a lunch on the way, on their way south.
That is wonderful. I love that approach. I'm big into using leaves. And if you got a place that's in shade, maybe you can just kind of flatten it out and you'll see birds there, and you'll really help your trees out, because that's a great way to feed your trees. So great thoughts there. Great thoughts there. We'll hope that helps out with the harbinger of spring stuff. We are now going to go to question number 4. So let's see what Nayeli has to say. Is the yucca plant a good plant for our yucky, humid weather? Can you share some insight? So it's a yucca plant. Kind of confusing because a more popular plant is yucca.
And that's when I first read it, that's how I read it. So I will answer that part, but then I will let you answer the yucca part. So so yucca, YUCCA, there are several varieties that will do well in the Houston area. One in particular is a red yucca that is great to plant in dry spaces, full sun, and they have this beautiful long stalk that will then have beautiful reddish pink, scarlet colored blossoms that are just magnets for hummingbirds. So, okay, take it away, Danny.
Well, before I take it, do you think those would be a really great plant to put on our year-round list? Because they'll bloom all the time.
I do. Yes. As long as it's got good drainage, but great habitat plant. Yes.
Well, so yucca, or cassava is what I always call it to avoid the confusion, or manihot, if we're being kind of technical about it, is a root vegetable. It makes about a 4 to 6 foot, maybe 7 foot tall plant, and it makes a ton of edible roots. And these things taste a little bit like a potato. And it's also used tapioca. If you ever use tapioca, that's the same stuff. But it grows great in Houston. It loves our weather. It's hard to find roots for it. And so if anybody knows a great source for roots, go ahead and put it in the comment section, and I'll follow up with you, because I always have people asking for it. And I have seen it really, really thrive in Houston. The last thing I'll say is it can be a little sensitive to root knot nematodes. And so treating those with a nematode control would be a great thing before you plant them. But you can get a whole lot of food and roots for next year from one plant. You plant in March and you harvest probably in late September, and you get a ton of stuff. Now they'll take up a lot of space, kind of 3 foot wide, 6 foot tall, big plants. So, but yeah, no, great question. I'm a big fan of them, but they're hard to find. So that's my only caveat on that. Well, Chris, we got a question from Sherry in the chat, and she wants to know, what was that dark purple or blue flower in your video? And I'm going to type the answer while you say it.
Oh, the one at the very end, perhaps?
Maybe, yeah.
I think that's the only dark purple one that was there. Yeah. So that's actually a Duranta, and that is a
Duranta.
Yeah, so it's that one was called Sweet Memories, but it's also called Golden Dewdrop, and that's a really great plant for our small shrub, or I should say large shrubs. It can be kind of like a small tree almost, but I had more butterflies on that all year. So that's a great.
Absolutely. There's a lot of Durantas. There's the Cuban gold one that has kind of a golden leaf. There's kind of a classic purple one that really has a dark green leaf and a really dark purple flower. So that's great. I'm glad she noticed that.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Good spot. Sherry's been our guest a couple times, and she does a great job too. She loves gardening and plants. Well, now is the time to get out and garden. Now's a great time to prune some of your perennial flowering, plants, kind of like Durantha, or if you got Hamelia, now's a great time to give it a pretty big cutback. Thyrallus, all that stuff. It can get pretty big. It's great to give it a spring cutback and let those flowers begin to bloom off. Another thing you want to do is plant tomatoes. And a big thing about planting tomatoes is how you plant it and how you cage it. And so we're going to have Joey Linderman walk us through some how to plant tomatoes conversation. So I'm excited about this because, I am about to put a bunch of tomatoes in my garden. So good tip here from Joey. Let's go over to.
That is not a tomato cage.
Oh. Joey's got some great information for us about how to plant tomatoes and how to grow tomatoes. Joey, how do I do this?
That's right. So as soon as you've gotten your good garden soil put in and your microlife fertilizer added to the soil, you're ready to plant. Okay. Sometimes the planting is the easy part, and what you do after that is more important. So you'll plant your tomato plant either level or a little bit deeper than where it was existing in the pot there.
So you got two little buddies on yours and I only have one on mine. That's okay?
That's okay. Sometimes there's two seeds in the pot, and just let it do its thing.
All right, here we go. I'm gonna go real deep. Now I know I always kind of, massage the roots a little bit. Should I pinch this off?
You should, yeah. If you're gonna, a lot of times when you plant them deep, if they're tall, they'll put out roots along the sides,
okay, so
and
I'll
that'll
take
just
this leaf
make
off.
a healthier root system. Yep,
okay.
take that
deep
little
as
one off.
I can go down there.
Yep.
And I'll just kind of cover it up. I got it pretty deep.
You did good.
And I know tomatoes need structure.
That's
so
right.
I brought a tomato cage. Check this out. I'm ready to go.
That is not a tomato cage.
Oh, this is
the smaller ones are more for peppers, eggplants, things of that sort.
Okay.
Really, you need at least a 48-inch tomato cage to support the big weight of all the tomatoes that you're going to have.
Wow.
And you can even use something decorative.
Okay.
Like this one.
So even a pretty one like that can work because it has the support, has the structure, and kind of guides. Wow, that's really pretty too.
Yep, not bad.
Not bad. And then we follow up with some good fertilizer, and then we're good to go.
Good to go.
Awesome.
Ready for some tomatoes.
Okay, thanks Joey.
You got it.
More great information, go to HomeShowGardenPros.com. Well, great word there from Joey. Yeah, I got a haircut and a beard trim on the way and back differently, so that's why that's just different. No, it is really key to support your tomatoes, and everybody listen up. I know that maybe you read a book that told you to wait till April. Do not wait till April. Go get tomatoes this weekend, next weekend. Do it as soon as you can. You got to get them in the ground because you want to get as much production as you can later on. So just keep that in mind. Public service announcement done for the week. So Chris, you guys got any cool things coming up? Anything you want to talk about real quick before we kind of wrap this up?
No, just get out there in nature, and really getting out there and seeing how nature works, seeing what, if you go to, say, Armand Bayou, and there are some gardens out there, several that I have actually installed at one time or other. So
Nice.
Get some ideas little plug there. Get some ideas and see how nature works and enjoy nature and, chill.
Absolutely. It's a great way to improve your immunity system, reduce anxiety,
Absolutely.
and just help out. Great place to breathe. So,
Yeah.
Well, big thanks to
Absolutely.
Christina LaChance for being on here. And if you want to know more about the Galveston County Master Naturalist, just Google it. It'll get you straight to their website. And there's a Gulf Coast Master Naturalist also that's a little more central to Houston. But both organizations are doing a good job. So good. Thank you for all your work. Well, this has been Home Show Garden Pros Facebook Live, and thank you guys for tuning in. We are done for this week. Hope you can tune in to Saturday morning show, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Sports Radio 610, and we'll do what we do, helping you improve your gardening game, getting the most that you can out of your efforts. Home Show Garden Pros.